titled Injured Wind, was awarded the Sirpi Literary Prize in 2004. She is also the recipient of several accolades like the prestigious Pavender Bharatidasan Virudhu by the Tamil Nadu state government, Justice M.M. Ismail Memorial Award by Kambam Karagam, and the Crown Jewel of Society's Activities Award by Madras Development Society. Nitya Mariam John is a poet and translator. Her writings have been published in journals, magazines, and national dailies, including Malayalam Literary Survey, Indian Literature, the Yearbook of Indian Poetry, the New Indian Express, and Times of India, among others. She was nominated for the Pushcart Prize in 2022 and shortlisted for Sundris Poetry Broadside Contest in 2023. She currently teaches at BCM College Kottayam. Kitchen Poems is her latest publication. On behalf of Kerala Literature Festival, we welcome and invite Tamirichi Thangapandiyan and Nitya Mariam John to begin this conversation. Over to you.
Good evening, one and all. It's an honor and privilege to be with Tamirichi Thangapandiyan, who is a poet, short story writer, orator, theatre performer, lyricist, and the MP. Give her a big hand. I asked her, ma'am, how do you find time for all of this? How do you manage it? And she just smiled and told me, this is my passion. Ma'am, before I went through your poems, which are very vocal about women's issues and look at, human, animal interconnectedness, and also, tries to find a balance between the modern and the tradition. I happened to read the introduction to your short stories, Birthing Hut and Other Stories in Translation, and you have mentioned about the Karisal touch, the region from where you come. And I could find it reflecting in many of your poems in the throb of silence too. Would you like to say something about the Karisal literature?
It's been good to be amidst the Calicut audience, and meeting you also in this evening gives me a lot of positive vibes. As a poet, as a short story writer, as you have mentioned, as has been mentioned in the introduction itself, I wear many hats, and being an MP is one such. But what gives me the real happiness is the passion with which I write my poems, I perform on the stage, and as an academician also. Because politician and being in positions at certain times, those are transitory things in your life. It is literature which holds you to the ground, especially the poetry and the short stories, which I base on the my rural women folk of Karisal soil. That's where I draw my strength, because that's where I belong. I'm a Karisal woman. And to all the audience here as well as to you, Karisal means a black, arid soil, scorching sun as the prevalent season most of the year, probably 7 or 8 months, sparse rains. So summer is the thing with which we grow up, and all those Karisal women, the tribe of whom I belong to, we never complain about the summer. We all work very hard in the fields, and sometimes as single parents, most of my sisters who come from that soil, they do face their life without any complaints. So that is what is the motivating factor behind all my short stories. They have never been to any schools, and feminism is a concept which has not been introduced to them through books or any sort of discourses or talks. But they are bearers of such feminist thoughts in their day-to-day life, and I get lot of inspirations through them, the way they face their life, the way they celebrate their carousel life as field workers, as shepherdesses, as hard-working women, as masons in buildings. So carousel is a soil which may not be very fertile, but those women are very resilient, very, very strong in their, I wouldn't say feminine qualities, in their fighting spirit. They don't attach too much of feminine themselves to any feminine identity. They are very strong and very unique in their characters on their own.
Thank you, ma'am. In connection with the same carousel soil, I think you have written about Vanapechi poems. You know, Vanapechi, there are two Vanapechi poems in this collection, and there are mentionings of Vanapechi again and again, and the seven virgins who accompany Vanapechi. So would you please say a little bit more about it, because you have also said that Vanapechi is your alter ego.
Yes. Again, Pechi is an indigenous goddess, an imp, I would say, a mad woman, a mad goddess of the forest, who is an iconic symbol of all of us, a woman of free spirit, who doesn't believe in any shackles or in any sort of societal conditions. So Pechi is a native deity of my soil who prefers to live in the forest without any shelters. People just go and worship her just in the wilderness of the forest. As far as I knew, there were no temples built for her. Quite recently, for the convenience sake only, some sort of shelters for the family functions, it's been filled. So I always bring Pechi to the urbanized life. When Pechi comes to the shopping malls in Chennai, what is it that she feels? Pechi once decides to come from a village to get some nail polishes for my village women, and she enters into a complex in Chennai, and Pechi is known for stealing things. In Tamil, we say kalavadudal. So she's known for that. Without any guilt, taking those things from the rich and then giving those things to the poor, that is her USP or the way in which she works. So in one of the malls, she just enters. She was just looking for all the nail polishes which all the village women, especially you mentioned about the seven virgins. Again, that's again a mythological reference. We call it as Kandimar Devam. We all have it in our indigenous culture. Seven women deities. So I always bring Pechi and these seven goddesses to think about and to mourn about all the violences which is happening to our contemporary women. Be it in Hathras, be it in anywhere, recent in Kolkata, all those, like the sob stories, the violence against women, my Pechi and all these goddesses, they will sit and then they will mourn. So that's how they come. Once Pechi comes, goes to a shopping mall looking out for nail polishes, and finally she ends up with stealing sanitary napkins for my girls back in the carousel land, because it's some luxurious thing of which my women folk back in the village can't afford to. They were using only clothes. So instead of nail polishes, see, this is the crux of my poems. Talking about the contemporary plight of women, especially the rural marginalized women who don't have the luxury or the opportunity to come and experience the upper class life or the chances which the modern life can offer to them. I explore it through the voice of Pechi, especially the angst of women. And through that is my way of interpreting Pechi either in poems or in my short stories.
Your short stories and poems have been translated into English. And usually, we always talk about the lost in translation process, So as a poet, as a writer, Have you felt that something is lost when it is translated into another language? As an amateur translator, I should say, for example, to quote from Malayalam, we have Edo, Eda, which is very difficult to translate the intense emotion in those two words into English. Maybe you can say dear one, no, but that's not Eda. Hey, you know. So you go to the glossary, but even then you have to use English. So as a writer, as a poet who has been translated into English, what would you like to say about it?
Yeah, I do have that hassles of, I'm myself being a translator. I always realize that you can never do full justice to a translation. மொழிபெயர்ப்பு என்பது நீங்கள் எப்பொழுதும் மூல மொழிக்கு செய்கின்ற பெரிய துரோகம். சாம்பல் என்பது நெருப்பின் மொழிபெயர்ப்பு ஆகுமா? ஜார்ஜ் ஸ்டெய்னர் asks. மொழிபெயர்ப்பு என்பது கான்கிரீட் கட்டிடத்தை பீத்தெடுத்து விட்டு ஓலை கூரை வேய்வதை போன்றது. நாப்பிச்சமூர்த்தி. That is, nobody can do full justice, but you can, come to an extent. And translation is not just a literary process, it's a social activity, I would say. It's a cultural activity. My poems are being translated into Malayalam. The translator is just sitting before us. He's Mr. Raghuram from Manjeri. He's translating my poems. Already some of my poems have been published in Malayalam magazines. I'm so happy that I'm being introduced to Malayalam readers also. So it's a cultural, social activity. So we miss the nuance, especially my poems are very difficult because I write in Karisal dialect. A dialect which is very specific to my area. Eravanam is that upper place in the roof wherein you just keep all your treasured items. So many other things. Pachanavi, unfamiliar. Pachanavi is like a poison. And Sendati is a herb which you touch, it will itch you. So many. I would say in a very lighter tone, if you translate my poems, the footnotes will be more than my poems. It will run, like, for example, I wrote a poem about my grandmother. As you said, like we have so many. We have Chitti, Chittappa, Ammata, Appata, Ata. But everybody is granny in English, everybody is uncle in English. It's a different connotation when it comes, especially to my native dialect. So I wrote a poem which compares the earrings, which we call as Thandati, to the pendulums of the clock. Whenever my grandmother recites a story, the earrings will go this way and that way, just as if the clock of the time clock is ticking. So how do the translator translate this Thandati? A long hanging earring which is being owned by the women of the southern region, blah, blah, blah. It goes endlessly like that. But still we would like to do that because that's how we reach to the different audience, and translation is a must, I would say. And I really remember with all gratitude all the translators, K.S. Subramaniam was translated, and Professor Bharati Harisankar was translated my stories in English. And some translation is being carried out in Hindi and Bangla also. Actually, it's an easy thing to be a poet, a creator. உங்க முன்னால ஒரு வெற்று தாள் தான் இருக்கும். You have an empty paper, you can write a poem on it. But a translator has a source text, and he or she has to be true to that in the target language. It's a Herculean task, but still, yeah, you can really appreciate their work.
Thank you. Your poems stay very close to cultural issues, to social issues. Poems like Chenchalai and Al Janabi, Sixth Venka, they have references to gang rape and brutal violence. And also you mentioned Nirbhaya in between. So how do you look at art, at literature? Does art stand as a reflective mirror to the society? So where do you really balance fact and fiction and yet try to convey your angst, your anger, and the need for reformation in your poetry? I mean, how do you connect art, literature, and society all together?
Art is the powerful tool, I would say, especially poetry or any sort of artistic expression should be a witness, not merely a witness, should voice strongly that the artist, the writer, or the creator is a witness of that particular contemporary issue happening. And the evidence is that he is part of it, he is voicing his strong opinion about it, should be strongly evidenced in his works, be it poetry or in short story. You can't just sit in the gallery and watch a football game, just passing commentary, the ball, oh, this should have been passed this side, or this should have been passed that side. Oh my God, they lost it. No. Gallery is not the place for any poet or an artist or a creator to sit and watch. He should jump inside. So the case of Nirbhaya or Janabi, Al-Janabi is a 16-year-old girl being gang raped by the US soldier, and there is a poem about her, Al-Janabi's sixth finger, and Nirbhaya also. And when Taslima was also attacked, I wrote a poem on that. So that should be ஒரு கவிஞன் அல்லது கலைஞன் தான் வாழும் காலத்தின் சாட்சியாக பங்காளியாக இருக்க வேண்டும். அப்படி அவன் இருந்தான் என்பதற்கான அடையாளங்கள் அவன் படைப்பில் புலப்பட வேண்டும். That is my stand. You can't just, be a spectator and then just, or sometimes you're so frustrated. I've written a poem about that also. What else can you do except write a poem and watching the doves being flown by all the peacemakers in the world? Especially the Elam struggle, like the Elam freedom struggle, my area of thesis is about that. So when such a struggle, a war which has a long history of over 50 years ended thus like that, you as a poet, as a creator, you have so much pain and angst and frustration. You just write a poem and then you tear it into pieces and then watch over it helplessly. But at least you do that. That's what Petrol Brush said. What do poets write during dark times? About darkness they should write. இருண்ட காலங்களின் பொழுது கவிஞர்கள் என்ன செய்தார்கள், எதை பற்றி எழுதினார்கள்? இருண்ட காலங்கள் குறித்து கவிஞர்கள் எழுத வேண்டும்.
There is a poem titled Growth, and there is a wonderful image in the poem where an ant crawls up the white beard of her teacher. So there are such small ordinary things in your poem. It might be a leaf, pickle jars, bangle. So, Rilke, Rainer Maria Rilke said that if you are a poet, it is your duty to find the rich in the most arid thing that is around you. So you actually excel in that. You use very small things to talk about extraordinary things, just like Wordsworth, I should say. So how do you go about the process of writing, crafting? When you see something very small, how do you think so big? So maybe you can talk a little bit about the craft of writing a poem, the process of editing, drafting a poem, and also maybe you can read one or two poems if you would like to, if you're comfortable with.
Yeah. I always go by the words of Keats, I would say. Poetry should possess you like a demon. You can't just sit before your paper and then you decide that, well, I'm going to write a postmodern poem. I'm going to write a poem in the ways of deconstruction or whatever it is. An image should come to you like this. And it is like that only. You can never fix up with that. I personally feel that, when you write a poem, you are like a possessed soul. Like a demon possessing you. Sometimes you write 10 poems in the day. Sometimes for more than a month, you don't even write a single word. That's how a poetic process. It's more of an inner journey. So the simple images, for example, I've shared, like the earrings of my grandmother are like the pendulums of the time clock, eternally clinking that way or this way. So the images, the conceits, or the comparisons should just come just like that. Probably I can read a poem about Vanapechi so that you can have a better taste of it. The title of the poem is To Each Unto Herself. The black Palmyra down in the ground, like Ahaliven's finger cut off. On that I was sitting like an empty toddy pot after the brew has been exhausted, with the stench of cheroot is BD, laced with the aroma of toddy is kallu. By the side was Vanapechi. Spreading a part of the sari, Silaikari was warding off the fury of burning sand. Silaikari is again a native deity, Silaikari Amman is. With the juice trickling down the elbow, savoring the Palmyra fruits. With laughter uncontrollable, the 7 virgins were decking their eyes with the black grease from the cart. One of them said, "The guys run a mile away from the stench of the neem oil in our head. No wonder our virginity will last forever." Polishing off with the Palmyra fruit, Rakachi, again another native goddess, threw the fruit on her and says, "They're possibly better than the bastards who live halfway." Looking at her swelling breasts, bursting through her blouse, Silaikari had this to say, "Only in the world shorn of them would beauty stay steadfast." Immersed in the heat of the cheroot, Vanapechi continued, "The island across the shore," that is Eelam. "The island across the shore apparently is full of widows, like the sprinkling of sesame seeds. After all the paraphernalia of the Ayana temple festival, including the ritual slaughter, whether it is a she or he or they, if a nondescript birth without womb and breasts, perhaps Koneshwari and Pennamberi. Koneshwari and Pennamberi, in the 90s, these 2 Tamil girls were raped by Sri Lankan soldiers and ruthlessly slaughtered. So Vanapechi says, without, in their nondescript birth, without womb and breasts if they were born, perhaps Koneshwari and Pennamberi can be born there without fear, lack in love, no age in war too, and in the widowhood. I tossed away the blank sheets I had gathered to write poems. I tossed away the blank sheets I had gathered to write poems. Let the urchins of the Palmyra waste use it. Let the urchins of the Palmyra waste use it to wipe their bums. To wipe their bums. Thank you.
The floor is open to questions from the audience. Yeah, I can see a hand there.
Hello, ma'am. How many times have you been asked why you only write about female? Why is there only a female rage within you? Why don't you give a voice to men? Because that's generally what female authors are faced. That's a question that generally all female authors are asked. Why do you write only about women? Why not about men? How often have you been asked, and how have you faced it? And what does it make you feel when you're asked that, particularly when your gender is brought into the equation as an author? What does it make you feel?
When we write our stories, no story is incomplete without men in that. So as in the men also travel along with that. But most of our works are women-centric, because if not us, who will say about our stories in a louder, clear voice of truth? We have our own renowned novelist K. Amira with us. So, I wouldn't say that there may be feminists amidst men also. There's no doubt about it. But the angst and pain of a woman, especially the area from which I hail from, they're not, familiar with the Western or a European feminism, but I would term them as one of the best feminists in the world. No, there was a woman who's selling flowers, and I call it as Purnatama. And Chandrukam is the vermilion mark which we always keep. Even after she loses her husband, she'll always be seen with the Chandrukam in her forehead. And once somebody asked her, because usually the flower sellers are supposed to be, you know, like with all those identity. So somebody asked her in front of me, are you keeping this just to sell the flowers even after you lose your husband? For that, I always call him Aras Chandrukam Purnatama. For that she answered, no, I was never born with a husband, but I was born with the vermilion mark. As soon as I was born, you know, like my mother had put this. So husbands might come in between and they might leave us in between. But this vermilion mark will stay always with me. That was the answer. So these kind of, you know, like answers, life experiences, I get from those women. But of course, you write a lot about men also, but as part of our stories. Now it is our time, because all along in history and literature, our stories have been told by men in the patriarchal tone. And we are rewriting our history. So we have to do it, I guess.
Hello, ma'am. Ma'am, can you hear?
Yeah.
I have two small questions. First is with respect to the Pechiamman you are talking about. There is a hearsay folklore or not. I think Pechiamman is also the goddess Saraswati or no? No. Okay.
No.
Okay. And,
Entirely a different image.
okay.
Pechi doesn't belong to any sort of stereotyped versions about goddesses.
Okay.
She's an indigenous goddess. She loves kallu, toddy, and bidi.
Okay.
That's what meat. So see, basically whatever we eat, the natives, whatever the food we prefer, we offer to her. That's her preference. So she's a very free spirit who doesn't belong to any sort of any religious conventions or whatever it is. There is no intermediate person between her and us. There is a pusari. Pusari you all know, no? Like village, the priest, who's, you know, like who also, you know, like drinks kalle and then eats meat and then offers. Anybody can go and talk to her, scold her, and then do whatever they want, take a pinch of holy ash, and then we can come back. So she doesn't conform herself into any sort of ritualistic or the main narratives of religious beliefs.
Okay. And Karisalna, the end land were the Tamil Nadu, which districts?
கரிசல் வந்து ராமநாதபுரம் விருதுநகர் முழுக்க அந்த வெயில் பிரதேசம் டவுன் சவுத் ராமநாதபுரம் விருதுநகர் ராஜபாளையம்லாம் ரொம்ப செழிப்பான பகுதி ராமநாதபுரம் அருப்புக்கோட்டை அது முழுக்க தேரிக்காடும் கருப்பு மணலும் எங்க ஊர்ல 2 வருஷத்துக்கு ஒரு தடவை கூட மழை பெய்யாம இருந்திருக்கு அதனால வெயில் தான் இப்ப சென்னைக்கு நான் போறப்ப எல்லாரும் where do you go for your summer they'll ask me which is a very strange question for me because summer is like a second skin to us we live with that வெயில் எங்களுக்கு ஒரு சவல பிள்ளை மாதிரி malnutrition child which your mother always carries on her hips feeding her with extra food or whatever it is we never complain about வெயில் குறித்து எங்களுக்கு எந்த புகார் பிராது எதுவுமே கிடையாது so I've written a Tamil collection அவளுக்கு வெயில் என்று பெயர் my name is summer that's roughly the title so it is totally about those women whom I talk about in my poems for example in the short story Muttuveedu itself is a very difficult term for the readers or audience like you to understand. It is translated as birthing heart. There is a belief, which is a sort of a superstitious belief that when the house which is given birth to a child, it is inauspicious to have food in that house within the 30 days. Or in a death house also. The house of birth is called as Muttuveedu. And there are 2 women who are breaking that superstitious belief in that story. Those are also from my Karisal card. The women who break the superstitious beliefs, the women who break barriers set by others, you know, societal conditions, they are also from the same community. So that's it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Yeah, this will be the one last question because we are running short of time.
This will be
Okay.
a concluding question. I've been reading Ma'am's lot of poems, especially she's a very sensitive person and living for in the moment. I've read your Veil Kavida, Mara Kavida, Appavukkaga,
Thank
all
you.
that. So this present generation is really running fast. Are they living in the present? We don't know. What is your message? What is the message for them from you?
That's a sort of a very, I would say, it sounds like a mundane practical question. But be here now is the most philosophical question on the earth. And especially when it comes to youngsters, when they have the virtual world on the tip of their fingers, it's very difficult, like to live in the moment. But they have to be grounded. And literature, arts, and any sort of those tools are the best way to keep them grounded. That's the best way to keep them grounded. These are all transitory things, like all the fast moving world. You miss the simple pleasures. இப்போ வேடிக்கை பார்க்கறதே இல்லாம போச்சு. யாருமே ஜன்னல் வழியா when you travel, nobody looks at the outside world in a car. Everybody is in the cell phone, mobile world. So how do you get inspirations if you don't observe human beings, if you don't reciprocate a smile, if you don't enjoy the aroma of a tea, or if you don't, like enjoy the warmth of a hug, so many other things. ஏன் ஒரு எறும்பு ஊறுறத கூட ஒரு 5 நிமிஷம் பார்த்தா தான் you slow down. Now there are books written how to slow down, how to, look, sit back and then rewind. So I would, it's a genuine request to all the youngsters to enjoy the simple moments, pleasures, be it, like the negative side or the positive side. Go through it. It'll give a sort of a grounding for you. That's my earnest request. And the best way to do is, to get grounded in poems or any sort of arts for that matter.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be in conversation with you, ma'am, and I'm sure that the audience too enjoyed it. But we are running short of time. Thank you so much. Thank you for the lively evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitya. That was a wonderful conversation with you. Thank you very much. Thank you.